message out to the world.
I ask all of you to wait and hear the truth before you label or condemn me.
The story had broken while Michael was on a world tour for his album, Dangerous. The shows were sold out, but Michael became more and more distraught over the allegations. He began taking painkillers, then canceled the tour. With his health deteriorating, his friends and lawyers urged him to settle, and he did, for a reported $21 million. Santa Barbara DA Tom Sneddon convened 2 grand juries. They both found no evidence against Michael and refused to indict him. But the case would continue to haunt him. What's the biggest misconception about him?
I think one of the greatest is that he's a molester. That's the greatest.
Let's get into that.
I know 1,000% there is nothing negative or wrong with my uncle. The world and the media turned that into something a lot more dark.
Lisa Marie Presley urged him to settle the Chandler case. Their friendship had turned into a romance, and they wed later that year. Many believed their marriage was a sham.
Nobody thought this would last.
Lisa Marie said it was a real romance, but there was one problem. Michael wanted to start a family right away, and Lisa Marie didn't. After 2 years, they divorced. Michael was afraid that despite his successes, he would never have children. Then his longtime friend, Debbie Rowe, offered to carry his baby. Michael's first child, Prince Michael, was born in 1997. There was widespread speculation that Michael was not the biological father of Prince or his other 2 children, Paris, born in 1998, and Blanket in 2002. Whatever the truth, Michael loved his children. Do you like being a father?
I love it.
Are you very involved with him?
Yes. When he's crying, to keep him from crying, you have to do one thing.
What?
I have to stand in front of him and dance.
Really?
Yes. And he stops crying, his tears turn to laughter, and he starts happy. He smiles.
And do you do your moonwalk with him?
Yeah, I do all kind of move. You move, and then he... and he stops crying.
He stops crying? You must do a lot of dancing.
I do a lot of dancing, yeah.
You started your family around the same time that Michael started his family.
And I remember calling him and hearing the joy and the joy in his voice when he would talk about fatherhood. It excited me. It made me want to do it. I had my first son in '99, so we would talk. We would learn, you know, he'd tell me tricks about everything from changing diapers to discipline. It's funny because I hear his voice in my head a lot.
The relationship with TJ was an oasis of normality for Michael. Michael comforted him when TJ's mother, Dee Dee Jackson, died.
That is the most isolating and lonely experience. He made sure my brothers and I stayed on track. I've never forgotten that.
Later, TJ, his brothers, and Tito set up the Dee Dee Jackson Foundation to help children in need. They were inspired by Michael, who donated tens of millions of dollars to charity and traveled the world helping children affected by war and famine.
I used to remember seeing kids crying and in so much pain, and then like that, just become happy over the presence of one person.
He went to hospitals?
All the time. All the time. And he donated a lot of his income to charitable things. And for us, seeing that inspired us to do our mom's foundation.
Michael also opened up Neverland to sick children. One of those children was Gavin Arvizo. Gavin had cancer. Michael befriended him and helped the family financially. But he would soon find himself again faced with accusations of abuse. And they would create the gravest crisis in his career and life.
Please keep an open mind and let me have my day in court.
When we return. Michael Jackson often invited 6 children to Neverland with their families. One of those children would be his downfall. It all began with a film we aired on 2020.
Tonight, a red-hot British documentary. 8 months with superstar Michael Jackson that will leave you speechless.
That documentary shocked the world when Michael said he slept in the same bed as some of his young guests, including 13-year-old Gavin Avizo.
The most loving thing to do is to share your bed with someone.
That was very questionable judgment on Michael's part. You know, to admit that he sleeps in the bed with children who aren't his own, and that this is a beautiful thing. People couldn't really relate to that.
Child Protective Services became concerned, and that led to investigations by the Los Angeles and Santa Barbara police departments. The boy in the documentary, Gavin Avizo, said Michael was innocent at first. But once the investigation started, Gavin said Michael did molest him. Gavin's mother backed him up, but there were problems in her past. She had been caught shoplifting and had sued a department store for sexual assault. The LA Police Department found no evidence against Michael. But the Santa Barbara DA, Tom Sneddon, charged Michael with child molestation and sent 70 officers to Neverland to search for evidence.
2 counts in violation of Penal Code Section 222 that involves administering an intoxicating liquor to a child for the purpose of committing a felony.
Michael Jackson was officially charged yesterday in California with 7 counts of child molestation and 2 counts of intoxicating a minor so he could molest him. Michael hired attorney Tom Mesereau to defend him. Mesereau thought the prosecution had no case at all.
Michael Jackson was a huge target. Never in the history of Santa Barbara County had this many officers and this many resources been devoted to trying to convict somebody. They did it because it was Michael Jackson and they wanted to become famous.
Michael's friend, Macaulay Culkin, also defended him when we talked. He talked about young boys sleeping in his bed, in his bedroom. Well, you and your brother Kieran had done that.
Yeah, it wasn't anything like weird. It wasn't anything we thought about. We go to the movies and we do this, we do that. And it's like, okay, you know, you plop down, you go to sleep, you wake up. It's just kind of just what happens, you know?
Once again, Michael addressed his fans directly.
I deserve a fair trial like every other American citizen.
The prosecution was based on the testimony of the Avizos and on material found at Neverland, none of which was child porn.
At the beginning of the trial, it was almost like Michael thought the charges were so preposterous that he wasn't going to take them seriously. Over time, it really starts to take a toll on him.
The trial lasted 4 months. On June 13th, 2005, the jury acquitted Michael on all charges. It was a victory, but one that left Michael devastated emotionally and physically. Here was the biggest star with the biggest fall that one can imagine, from being beloved to being vilified. Did it change him? Did it make him withdraw from people?
It just was overwhelming for him to become recognized in those lights, because he wanted to be everything but that.
He told the world that he was turning his back on Neverland.
I won't live there ever again. I'll visit Neverland. It's a house now, it's not a home anymore.
Michael left the country with the children. He was their only parent. Debbie had terminated their parental rights. They moved from country to country. The children wore masks in public to keep their faces out of the papers. He became increasingly dependent on painkillers for the injuries he had suffered on stage. And he spent lavishly.
Michael was very deeply in debt. He would get all these advisors who would come in and say, Michael, you got to stop spending. And he would go, you're fired.
By 2009, Michael was over $100 million in debt. Then in March 2009, after years away from the stage, Michael announced his return, the This Is It tour.
This is it. I mean, this is really it. This is the final curtain call.
His 10 London concerts were sold out in less than an hour. 40 more concerts were added and sold out as well. But rehearsals for the 50-year-old star were grueling, and Michael drove himself to make everything perfect.
Wait, no.